Hey guys, it's Pete from MyJewelryBench.com. Today I'm going to do this video. It's a request from a YouTube viewer, and they wanted to know if I could show them how to make this particular ring. So I'm going to walk you through the processes of doing this. It's a very long video. I apologize. It's almost 50 minutes long, and I want to just show you each of the steps. Let's get going. So when I start working on a project like this where I'm going to make a ring or copy a ring or do something similar, I start by looking at the ring and looking at it as its pieces. So for instance, you can see underneath the diamond I have two scrolls, one on either side. We have the frame with a raised gallery and a thinner inner gallery just underneath the head, and of course the head itself. So I'm looking at this as basically 4 or 5 different pieces when I'm getting ready to design it. So I'm going to start by making the scrolls, then I'm going to work on the ring itself and adjust the object or the mesh that I create to form to this. And one of the processes I'm going to use is to basically import this image into Blender as a plane so that I can overlay it onto my mesh as I'm doing the design work. So with that said, I'm going to count up the diamonds. I'm going to look at the dimensions. I don't have the ring in front of me, so this is going to be kind of a wing and a prayer, but we're going to make a ring that looks very similar to this. And if you practice and follow along, you might be able to make the same ring, if not better than me. Obviously here what I've done is I've imported the image as a plane and I'm using it as a background. And I'm going to start work on the first part of this, which is to make the 2 scrolls that go underneath the head and attach to the ring shank itself. If you don't know how to load an image as a plane, you can go look it up on YouTube. There's a million videos. It's pretty simple, and it is an add-on within Blender. So here what I've done is I've used the Shift A to add in a curve, and I'm using a curve path, and I've gone into edit mode and I'm grabbing each of the points and just moving the points around. Now it's easy when you're looking at this straight on from a side view. You can just grab each point, press the G key, and then move your mouse around to adjust it in edit mode. And then once you get it to the place where you want it, the shape of the black line that you see on the screen will actually be the shape of the path that we're going to use to make our scroll work. So don't be afraid to practice with this, and I encourage you to play with editing curves and paths just to get those different shapes. And here you can see I've just added in a new cube, and what we're going to do is extend that out. I'm going to loop cut it with about 80 or 90 loops so that it can bend easy. So now that I've got the loop cuts in, I'm going to grab the cube that I just added and modified. I'm going to size it down to a piece that I think will fit the shape of the scroll curve. And then once I'm happy with that, I can apply a curve to it. So here I'm just centering the origin. I'm going to move everything to the middle, just because it's easy to work with everything in the middle of the screen. I'm applying the rotation and scale, and I do that on just about every object I work with, just in case I've moved it, rotated it, done whatever, just to get the right effect. Now I've added the curve modifier to the cube, and I'm just going to place it about where I want to. Here I'm sizing it to make sure that it's going to be about the right size for my model. And now I can bring that picture back in, and I can adjust the location of my scroll and move it around to the point where I can overlay it onto the photo of the ring that we are working with. And before you start moving that scroll around, I would suggest applying the curve modifier in the modifiers tab. Simply select the scroll, go to the modifiers tab, and press apply to apply that curve effect. And here you can see that I'm also adjusting the point or center of origin on the model so that I can rotate it in the proper point. Now I'm just going to size it, rotate it, and just fit it into about where I want as an overlay above the picture. And that's about where the scroll is going to be. That looks pretty good. We can adjust the width of that scroll later. I'm going to rename this scroll. Now I'm adding the circle for the ring. Just use Shift A and then add a curved circle. Here we got a Bezier curve, and I'm going to rename that. And I've called it ring shape. Now this is the fun part, because here we get to do some more stuff here. Now I subdivided the curve so that I added 4 extra points. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch the upper part of this curve in a way that allows me to get the shape of the ring that I want. So you can see I'm in edit mode and I'm not in perspective view. I'm looking at this straight on with the number 3 key on my keyboard, and I can grab the points in edit mode and just use the G key and move them around, or I can grab 2 points and move 2 points around or size them back and forth. But if you're in perspective view, you're going to get really odd shapes. So try to work on this either with the 1 key on your keypad, looking straight on the front or the side. That way you'll be able to model correctly. It just makes it a whole lot easier to grab those points and work with them without deforming in 3 dimensions the ring shape. And I'm going to bring in the picture again so that we can overlay the picture onto the shape of that curve so I can make some more changes to it. Okay, so here I'm going to add in a cube, and I'm going to size it to about 55 millimeters or so. And that is a ring length that I want to work with. I'm just going to add in some loop cuts. I'm going to do about 200 loop cuts, I think, here. Once I've added the loop cuts, I can then work with this to just kind of size it along the z-axis and kind of get it to about the shape I want. Now here what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the ends of the ring shank. I'm going to call this a ring shank. It's our extended cube. And with those ends selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the proportional editing feature at the top of your screen, and I'm going to size the 2 end pieces on the z-axis only to get kind of the dimension I want. And I'm also going to taper them along the y-axis just to get kind of a smaller end piece towards the top of the flare on the ring shank. When that's about how I like it, and you can adjust yours to however you want it to look, when you get it to the way you like it, just press tab and exit edit mode. When you're finally happy with the shape, then we will go to the modifier section for our ring shank and add in a curve modifier and apply it to the ring shank curve, or the ring shape curve. And then I can start just moving it back and forth until I get it about where I like it centered. And again, I'm looking at this from the side view, so I can kind of eyeball just about where I want it. Here I'm adjusting it, the size along the x-axis. And again, to do that, SX, which would size it there. And now I'm going to bring in the picture of the ring and unhide that so that I can kind of look at this and see about the basic shape of where I want everything to be. Now it's not perfect, but I can go back and play with that ring shape curve now and make any changes I want to it. So while I'm here working, what I decided to do was add some colors to each of the mesh models that I'm working with. I'm going to give each of them a different color so that I remember which one I'm working on. And you can do that too if you want. There is a random color option in Blender, so every time you add a new mesh, it'll give it a random color. I didn't turn that on, so I'm just doing that manually. And now I can go back and start playing with the curve that's called ring shape and start modifying that until I get the position of that section, the upper section of the ring, the right shape that's shown in the picture. Again, we're just going to grab some of these points, and I can grab more than one by holding the Shift key and then using the S key to size them back and forth along the x-axis, and I can move them up or down. And again, I'm just going to play with this until I get the form that I like. And you can see here it's starting to take a good shape. And again, play with these points back and forth. And again, because we have the curve modifier applied to that square or that ring shank, the curve that I'm modifying is affecting the shape of the mesh itself, which is just how you want to work when you're doing modeling like this, when you're trying to copy something. Now that we're happy with the shape of our ring, I'm going to kind of hide that a little bit, and we're going to go back and look at the other curve. That other curve is going to be used to make the bottom of our ring, so I'm going to expose that by making it visible. I'm going to add in another cube, so I'm going to go add mesh cube. We're going to size that down, and we are actually going to make the upper part of the ring gallery that is missing from the ring shank. And again, we're just going to elongate this along the x-axis. And we are also going to go into edit mode and add in some loop cuts. Now here I'll probably add in maybe 75 or 100 loop cuts, however many you want. It's not going to make much of a difference to your modeling. Once I'm happy with that particular shape, I can play with it, adjust it, do whatever I want, and then we can apply the curve modifier to it. Here you can see I'm bringing the image back, and you can see the section of the ring that I'm trying to get this new piece matched up with. So I'm going to take that and we're going to apply a curve modifier to it. I'm just going to give it a generic color here just so I know it's a different piece. Go back to modifiers, add the curve modifier, select the Bezier circle, and then I'm just going to rotate this around along the x-axis just to get it towards the top. With that done, I can unhide my model, and I can just kind of overlay the new piece with the old piece. Because they're different colors, I can see about where it falls in, and then I can adjust its position and size until I'm relatively happy with it. Here I'm adjusting the size along the z-axis, which makes that upper part of the gallery a little thinner. Now I'm going to position it where I like it. I hope that looks good. It looks good to me. And I'm just making it a little bit narrower than the ring shank itself. You'll see that in some designs. In some designs it might be a little wider. In others it might be the same size. It's up to you. Your personal design is your goal. With the basic part of the ring done, we're going to add in the scrolls, and we're going to take a look and see how we can line up the scrolls onto this ring and just make them look exactly where and how we want them to look. You can see I'm adjusting the size, I'm adjusting the rotation just a little bit here just to get it looking about like I think it should, and then eventually we can finish the fitment of this by bringing in the photo of the ring as an overlay. Now I just duplicated that scroll. I'm going to drag the new one over to the other side. I'm going to place it about where I like it. You can put your cursor in the middle and set the orientation to the cursor and use the mirror option. I tend not to do that. I tend to do eyeballing. And here what I'm looking at is an overview or an overlay of the ring, and then I'm going to take the two scrolls and I'm going to give them a new color so that I can see them better. And then I will move them around and adjust the size and rotation until I'm happy with the position. Hopefully they can match up with the drawing that we have as best we can. And guys, now that I'm happy with the ring design, I'm going to move on to the head. So here's how we're going to design the head. I'm going to actually create another cube. So I'm going to add in a new mesh cube, and I am going to size that to be kind of a long tall, thin piece that I can actually mold into the shape of a prong. So here you can see I've added the cube. I've sized it down to 1.2 millimeters. And now I'm going to size it along the z-axis. And I'll size it along the x-axis. I'm going to add in a loop cut here for the top part of the prong. And you click once and then you can drag it up and down, and once you get it where you want it, click again, and now it's placed. And what I'm going to do now is just grab one of the faces on this, and I'll move it over to create kind of a triangular shape a little bit with that little tip of the prong. Now I'm going to grab the edge loop on the bottom, and I'm going to move that in, just giving myself a little bit of a shape. I'm going to add in one more loop cut and just move that down a little bit to about here, and now I can extend that on the facial side and make a flat surface, a flat vertical surface, just like so. And if I have to make any changes to this, I can do that. What I tend to do when I'm working with something like this is I'll overlay a diamond on top of it, and I'll just try to get the shape of what I'm working with. So you can see here, I'm just going to grab out of my library here, I'm going to go grab a round diamond. I'm going to import it into the scene, and I'm going to start working with the shape of the diamond along with this head so that I can make it just about how I want it to look and feel. And again, I'm doing this by look, I'm not doing this by measurements. I'm going to go back into edit mode and adjust the prong, and I will move this over just a little bit to get it about there. That looks pretty good. I could have done a better job on this prong and when I made the head, so just take your time, practice, and just get it to the point where you're happy with the design that you're working with. If you don't like the way you did it, you can always go back and change it. So now that I'm happy with that one prong, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to rotate the copy 180 degrees along the z-axis, and I'm going to kind of put it together with the other side. And that looks like I have two prongs that fit that diamond pretty well. I'm going to select those. I'm going to go to the Boolean tool, and I'm going to perform a union so that those two pieces are now one object. And then because this is a 4-prong head that we're working with, I'm going to duplicate this piece again. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees along the z-axis once I get the shape that I like. And that looks pretty good there. And just to get a better idea, I'm going to bring up the photo and move the head up to the upper section where the head is in the picture. And I'm going to just kind of get a feel for how does the head look like onto the picture of the ring, and if I'm doing it correctly. And once I'm happy with that, I'll hide the picture, I'll move it back down, and I'll just finish up my head. And just to make sure that everything's doing well on here, I'm going to center everything. So I'm going to set the origin to the center of the mass. I will place it in the middle, and then I duplicate this. I'm going to set the rotation and scale. Rotate the new piece on 90 degrees. And now I have a centered 4-prong head, and I can select both pieces of the head and perform a Boolean union just to keep one, so that I have one piece now. Now that that's done, I can delete the diamond because I don't need that, and I can get this modeled over our ring design. Here I'm just going to apply a new color to the head so that we can see it better in our model. And I'll unhide everything so we can see the overlay of the ring. We can see the model that we've made. Actually, the 5 pieces total now. We've got the head, the 2 scrolls, the upper gallery, and the ring shank itself. And again, I'm just measuring up the ring head to fit the overlay of the ring that we're trying to copy and get a good idea for how it looks. I'm pretty happy with this look so far. And as you're practicing to come up with your own model, I hope you're pretty happy with your design also. At this point, guys, I decided to apply some metal texture, some silver texturing to this particular ring. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing it right now just to get a feel for how it looks and if I'm happy with how it's going to look before we proceed to the next step. Now for the next step, what I want to do, I've actually merged all the pieces together so we have basically one ring, and all the meshes are now modeled into the ring shank. And what I want to do is add a cylinder. I'm going to size that cylinder down to 16.5 millimeters, which is about a 6.5 size 7-ish. And I'm going to adjust the sizing of my ring to fit the outer perimeter of the cylinder so that I know I've got the good ring size modeled onto my mesh. Now there's another reason I do it this way. It's also because proportionally, if the ring size is going to be like a size 7 and it's 16.5 millimeters, I can adjust it then and I can make any modifications to the ring shank at this point. The only thing I haven't added to the model is the head. The head is still a separate item. But the scroll, the gallery, and the ring shank, those are all Boolean union together at this point. So here you can see I'm adjusting the ring shape curve to fit the approximate perimeter of the ring itself. Because I've applied the modifiers to the ring shank, you can see that any change I make to that shape curve now does not affect the ring. The next thing I want to do is highlight our photo again of the ring, and I want to count the number of diamonds that we have on this. I believe there's approximately 11 diamonds per side. However, you can do however many designs you want. Depending on the width of the band will depend on how many diamonds that you can have going down the side. So now I've got my ring shape curve set the way I want it. And what I want to do is use the Jewel Craft tool eventually to model my diamonds along the side. What I'm going to do here is size this along the y-axis to make it just a little bit thinner, because I'm going to place 1.5 millimeter-ish size diamonds onto this ring, so I want to see proportionally how these are going to look. So I'm narrowing the size of the ring just a little bit, and you can see by my y-axis under the dimensions there, it's about 1.68 millimeters, and I think that's going to be really good for what I'm working with. I'm going to change my view into side view so that I'm looking at this from the side. I'm going to select the curve that's called ring shape, and I am going to make any minor changes to this that I need to make before going on to the next step, which is actually going to make the cutouts for the diamond placement. And I'm just going to tweak it just ever so slightly to get the perimeter of that shape just right. And here I'm working with the curve and not the ring. The ring is just there for reference. Now you can see I'm bringing in a cylinder, and this cylinder I'm going to use with the Jewel Craft scatter tool, and I am going to apply this to the curve so that I can make this kind of work along those parameters. Now to use this, you grab the cylinder, and I'm applying the rotation and scale. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to select the cylinder, hold the shift key down and select my curve. And when I do that, then I can go use the Jewel Craft scatter tool. But both those items have to be selected in that particular order. So I've selected my cylinder, then I selected the curve. Now I'm going to use the scatter tool in Jewel Craft, and let's say I want to move these in the proper position. And I'm just going to adjust my cylinder because it isn't right. And if you look closely in the lower left corner, you can see I'm adjusting the starting and ending position until I get my 7 cylinders located where I want them. Now, I did try some other settings and I didn't like the way it looked, so I'm just playing around, and this is a good time to play because you haven't done any real destructive work on your model, so just keep that in mind. I didn't like the offset there, so I'm going to adjust those manually again. And just play with this tool and get a good feel for it. You'll see why I'm doing this in just a moment. I'm trying to mimic the ring design here, so we have to make the horizontal cutouts along the perimeter of the ring. So I'm using these cylinders as my cutouts. And now that I've got 9 of them placed and I'm happy with the way they look, and if you're happy with the way they look, we can go on to the next step, which is mirror. And by mirroring them along the x-axis, I duplicate those on the opposite side of the ring. Then I can select each of my cylinders, holding the shift key down. The last item I want to select will be the ring shank. And once that's done, I'm going to go to the Boolean tools and I'm going to use the difference. And you can see it made some nice cuts along the surface of our ring. And those cuts are the first part that we're going to do. We're going to have to do another cut through that section, and that gives us placement for our 9 diamonds on either side. Again, I'm doing the exact same thing on the opposite side, and I'll do a difference, and there we go. We have the cuts perfectly made on both sides of the ring now. Okay, so this is a little bit more of a difficult cut, and what I have to do here is cut a loop through the center of all of these grooves that we just made using the cylinder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new cylinder, and I'm going to size this down so that it's very long and very thin. And I'm just going to make the radius a couple of millimeters here. 1.2 millimeters works. And in edit mode, I can add in my loop cuts. So I'm going to add in a couple hundred loop cuts to this just to make it bend a little easier. Once you've got that, you can go back to object mode. Make sure that you add in a curve modifier to this object, because we want the curve modifier applied to it so it follows the shape of our ring shape curve. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to select the ring shape curve, and you can see it puts it along the perimeter of that, and we'll just move it along the x-axis, or in this case the z-axis, until we get it to about where we want it. That works okay right there. And then I have to modify this to the length of the opening for the ring. You'll see here in a minute. I'm going to size this along the I believe it's the z-axis, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just moving it around to get it lined up where I want it. And I'm going to line it to the center of the ring shank. And I'm using the X arrow there to move it along. And now that I've got it about where I want it, I can go back and move it along just to see if the path is going to be perfect for our cutout and our rings. That looks like good placement right there. I'm going to ring this up to the top, and then I can size it. And there, I'm moving it. What we want to do is actually size it. And because I forgot to apply the rotation and scale, what I'm going to do is apply the rotation and scale now. So I'm going to set the origin to the middle. I'm going to place it in the center of the screen, and then I will apply the rotation and scale using Control A once I get it aligned where I want it, right there. Now I've got it aligned perfectly, and when I size it along the x-axis, once I get it placed, it will work properly. So SX, and then I can make it longer and just follow that right down to the sides of the ring shank. And when I look at that and I use the cutout tool or the difference tool here, you can see we're going to cut the openings up perfectly for the diamonds. So I'm going to apply that modifier. Then I'm going to select that, hold the shift key down, select the ring, hit the difference tool on the Boolean option, and now you can see I've made a perfect cutout for the placement of each of the diamonds. Now I've got a lot of sharp edges here, but remember, once you have the ring cast, you can go through, set your diamonds, polish those up, use a prong tool to push over and make them a little rounder, and then buff it out. You'll be fine. So now that I'm going to go back to Jewelcraft, I'm going to add in a diamond. I'm going to make this 1.5 millimeter, and we will hit OK. And again, I want to select my diamond, hold the shift key down, select the curve, and then I can use the Jewelcraft scatter tool to scatter that along the curve shape. And I've got 9 diamonds. We're going to rotate those around, or tilt them in this case, so that they all match, and then I can just use the placement just to give me a visual reference for how they're going to look. And again, you're not, the diamonds are irrelevant here. I'm only using those for visuals. Now I'm just going to select them again, and if I have to move them, I can adjust their position and just get them lined up visually on the ring so that we can see what it's going to look like when we actually go and set each of the diamonds. Not quite right, but we'll just tweak until we get it the way we want it. That's pretty much how you're going to make this whole ring without the particular plane with the diamonds here. I just wanted to show you that, if you want to, you can get a little bit more detailed here and just place the diamonds around until you get a ring that looks like a real diamond would look like, so you can see what the final results are going to be. Once you're happy with this, you can use the mirror tool once your diamonds are placed and mirror them on the opposite side of the ring so you can get a feel for how it's going to look. Of course, the last stage is actually using the cutout tool in Jewelcraft to make the holes in the ring for each of the diamonds. So what you can see here is what I'm doing is grabbing the 9 diamonds on one side. I'm going to go over to the Jewelcraft cutter tool, add those in. I'm going to increase the length of the bottom section so they protrude deeper into the ring. And you can see here I've got the wrong side there. So I'll grab that side. And then I can select each of these cutouts and perform a difference on the ring itself. So I'm going to select each of the 9 cutouts. I will select the ring, and then I will go to the Boolean tool and use a difference. And what that does is it puts holes in the inside of the ring where the diamonds will be placed. And again, those holes are there for mostly cleaning so that we keep an open air under the diamond, and it just looks better. Also lightens up your model a little bit. Now we're going to perform the same function on the opposite side of the ring. So I'll grab each of these 9 diamonds. I'll use the Jewelcraft cutter tool. We'll add the cutters, and then we will adjust the length so that we get them just where we want them. Select each of our cutters, holding the Shift key down while I'm selecting. Then grab the ring and do a Boolean difference. And the last one here I'll grab, and we're just going to redo that one. That's good. Extend that in a little bit. So I don't want to cut into my scroll. And we'll perform the difference using the Boolean difference tool. I just want to say thank you to the YouTube subscriber who wanted to have this done. I hope this helps with you doing your own ring. I'm sure that's what you're hoping to do with it. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing now. If you need to get a copy of Blender Gems, which is my jewelry and diamond library for Blender, or any 3D modeling program, please go to my website and check it out. It's www.myjewelrybench.com. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this again. And if there's anything else you want to see, please leave comments in the comment section below and give me some ideas. I appreciate them all the time, and I appreciate all of you. It looks like I'm going to hit 2,800 subscribers this weekend, so I'm excited, and I owe it all to you guys. Thanks for watching.